Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Braden here from Beach of Skylights. Today we're going to show you how to install some Velux blinds into a curb mounted skylight. Now, the skylights we're installing to are standard size, 22 by 46 inside dimension. So the components we have here, we have the actual tray itself, which the blind is going to sit on, and then the blind itself here. Okay, these are solar powered room darkening blinds, by the way. We'll get into those details in a second. So this is going to be the first part of the video where we show you how to put the tray and the blind together to be prepared for the actual blind installation. So there's two parts where you're installing the blind itself into the tray, and then afterward actually putting it into the skylight, which will be into part two. So we'll get the boxes opened up here and show you the components. Alright, so here's the components that come in the box that I just showed you, the first box. So this one here, the tray box. Alright, so we have the two longer rails, which actually has the blind clips. So you want to make sure that when you're putting these in place that this guy and this guy are here at the top side together, and not this thing at this end and this one over here. They have to be side by side like this. Now we also get the corner connecting pieces, which attaches these two, the high and low side, to the longer pieces here. So you can see how significantly different the sizes are. Those are very important to differentiate. And then here's the foam gasket as well, and obviously along with the screws. Now it does come with an instruction manual as well, which is very helpful. Now these are very simple to put together, as you'll see in a second here, but it is always good to check your manual as well. So I'm just using a cordless impact drill here, or any sort of drill is good. Even a screwdriver will work fine for this portion. But yeah, we're gonna get started here in a moment, and I'll show you how to put this thing together. So I'm actually glad I'm doing this video, because as you can see here, in the instruction manual, it basically shows you to take off the skylight, put it together, put in the tray, then put the skylight back down. It doesn't really go into detail on this step here, step two. I mean, it's very, very simple. It's very self-explanatory, but I just want to give people a visual interpretation of what it's going to take to put this together, because Velux stuff can be a little confusing if you're not familiar with their instruction manuals and their products in general. So we're going to go over the details here and show you what I'm doing. First thing you want to do is you want to make sure you got your screws that the package came with here. You'll need a Phillips bit, a number 2 star bit, and you want to take your corner pieces, right, and you'll see that there's already pre-drilled holes in the corner pieces and in the rails themselves. So essentially what you want to do is match up these holes, which are offset drilled here, as we can see, and once you slide them in, this bottom kind of flange here will actually insert perfectly fine. If you try and go in the other way, it just won't let it happen. So it's kind of nice that way, where you sort of can't screw it up in that sense. We're just going to put it in, get my screws, and just gently screw it in. Doesn't have to be cranked at all, just taut. Right, and so once you got one of your long sides put in here, you can take a shorter piece, which will become your high side here, and that gets inserted just like this here. Same way as before. I don't know if that's a good angle. Should just slide right on, and then our two holes back here are going to line up where we need them. These two holes right here. And you should probably do better than me and have a better work surface. I apologize, but I'm so used to doing this stuff on the fly on job sites that you know, I just kind of make do with what I got. So here is a corner all finished up, right? So just 4 screws in total per corner. two here, two here, and it's just rinse and repeat for the rest, right? So now we would take this side here, and boom, voila. Now it's not gonna be the most freaking structurally sound piece that you put in, but it doesn't have to be. You know, at the end, make sure your screws are as tight as they can be, but again, not over cranked. And don't worry if it's got a little bit of wiggle room. We're gonna put that foam gasket here to kind of solidify things near the end. And the blind itself is gonna give it some rigidity as well. All right, so this is what she looks like all put together with all four sides. Just one moment here. All right, so you're gonna have, on the underside, you're gonna have this basically white rubber gasket here. This is gonna rest against the inside drywall or whatever inner trim or whatever's in the skylight tunnel. So basically picture a board coming up like this, resting up against here. The actual blind is gonna insert here. So the blind motor and function is actually gonna be installed to these clips up here. That's what these are for. And most deck mounted skylights just come with these pre-installed. So because we're doing a curb mounted skylight, we need this tray basically for these clips is what it is. It's just housing. This is the housing for the blind, right? So now we're going to do the step where we actually put a foam rubber gasket on the underside here all the way around, and this is what's going to rest onto the curb or the frame that's sticking out of the roof. It's very important to have this foam gasket so water penetration does not reach under here, which we'll cover more on the roof side when we put this in. But for now, it's a very important step that we cannot miss. So one thing I just realized here in the manual for the step where it talks about doing the foam gasket, it basically comes in this red color here, insinuating that the sticky side should be sticking upward, right? So this is what's silly to me, is that they kind of tell you to do this on site on the roof, but they don't tell you that that part is going to be extremely difficult when there's the non-sticky side resting downward onto the curb with, you know, nothing really to hold it down. Like a breeze could actually steal your gasket away. That's why it's much more intelligent in this case, particularly, to pre-install the foam gasket with the sticky side up against the white vinyl here. That way it's permanently on there, it's not going anywhere, and it's installed properly. And in fact, that's the way that Velux would send it to folks who ask for a pre-installed tray, right? So, which is possible. Now, for those of you who don't know that, or in this situation that I am, where you ordered it and they did not pre-install it, you can, and you got to do it yourself. You want to know the right steps. So to me, it makes way more sense to just pre-install the foam gasket, and that way when I bring this whole thing on site, it's just going to slap in, no problem, no headaches. Just put it in. All right, so we got the foam gasket here. Comes in 2 strips. Sorry, 4. They actually pre-cut it for us, which is kind of nice. Sorry, I thought it came in 1 roll here. So this is all right. Now we're just gonna do a dry fit and see how long this is, right? So this goes almost edge to edge. On this, I don't know if you guys can see that. It goes pretty much edge to edge. Here, let's just do a dry fit with the longer ones and see how this lands. And same here, these go edge to edge as well. So what we might do is either an overlap, or we might cut some of it. Let's see what I'm thinking here. Now when it comes from the factory, I'm almost certain they do an overlap with the foam, which I'll show you here in a second what I mean by that. And it is fairly sticky, so be prepared. And when I install it, I don't want to stretch it first. I want to kind of put it on loosely on one edge and just lightly feather it into place here. We don't want to really stretch it out, because weathering and climate is going to have expansion and contraction. Sorry, expansion and contraction all for us. So we want to make sure this is on here nice and loose. That way, not loose sticky wise, but loose where it's not expanded, so that when we do get really hot weather and all that, it leaves room for expansion. Otherwise, things are going to get tight, and we don't want that. It's just not good for business. There we go. All right, so what's going on here is I decided to do a slight overlap, nothing crazy, right? I don't know, just my personal taste here. You guys can let me know if I'm a bit off on this, but it comes from the factory, typically with a full overlap, but I don't like that. It seems like too much of a riser here. So I'm just thinking a slight overlap on the one end over there. And here I'm just gonna take my X-Acto, and I did a full overlap over here. I'm just testing a couple things out here. I just did a full overlap here. I just want to see if there's any difference at all. I mean, it's a lot more raised up here, right? So I'll probably trim that off later and just do a slight overlap like what I did over here. I just kind of like this better. Personal taste more than anything. All right, so we're just getting into the blind stuff here. As I was filming there, I realized I should cover some numbers and details and info here. Now, when we order any blind or anything, it's all determined by the skylight that we're putting in, right? So a very common size for Velux or any curb mounted skylight brand is 2246, not 24 by 48. A 2x4 in the skylight world is considered 2246 inside dimension. So 22.5 by 46.5 inside rough opening. So this blind here you'll see on the box has FSCC 2246. It's very important. The FSCC is the the model and the color and all that stuff, but the 2246 is really important. And the tray box that we have here says ZZZ 2246 as well. It's the numbers, the 2246 that really matters. And the skylight itself should have something like FCM 2246 as well. But the letters are kind of nominal because those are all dependent on the functionality, the style, right? So, but one thing I can tell you is you cannot put anything curb mount related onto a deck mount skylight. So, but that's more for later. I don't want to bore you with the details. Just basically make sure the numbers are adding up. That's really the most important part. All right, so we're gonna get started here with the blind on the tray. I'm just gonna set this aside here. And we're gonna get this blind box opened up and we'll see what we got. Now what's cool about these blind boxes is German engineering, or Danish engineering, I should say. Velux is Danish. We got these tabs here. Kind of like a kick tab bar. If you're into that sort of thing. Once we get the blind box opened up, we'll see here, we got the remote because it's solar powered. Then we got basically the brains of the whole operation, the actual blind itself. Right, try to keep these strings intact. And in this box we'll have our screws and hardware and stuff as well. And also here are the rails that the blind is going to be guided on through the track system. Let me set this box aside. All right, now, so we got our box opened up here and we got our hardware box. Now this has a couple different things. It's got the screws to install the blind, and it's got the clips. So these clips are important. They're the first step we're gonna do here. But the rest here, so all this is just to mount the remote to the wall. So don't worry about that just yet. Really what we want are these clips, the little included screwdriver thingy-majiggy, and these screws. Now, before we get started with the clips, a little trick I want to show you contractors out there to expedite the process here, so it doesn't take you 5 years to install this thing. The bag with the clips also comes with the screwdriver, this orange little screwdriver head, and it comes with this little Torx bit. I just put the Torx bit on my drill. If you try and do this all by hand, it's possible, but it just takes a long time. Do yourself a favor, put it on your drill, or use your own Torx bit, whatever you want. Because all the screws they give you are all Torx. So, for the first step here, we're going to pull out the manual. Now, when you pull out the manual, it gives you step A, which basically just says, hey, make sure you have all your parts, your sizes are all good. And then here we go. So that's why these manuals they're great, but they're not so great at the same time. They're all picture based, right? They say this, click. It's like, what the heck are we clicking into? What step did we get to get here? I didn't see that, right? But basically, it gives you a picture here what it's going to look like. It's got the blind itself, which is up here mounted, right? Then it's got the rails, but then it's clicking into something. It's like, what the heck? How is this working here, right? So I'm going to show you that. Basically, I showed you these clips up here before, right? So the blind itself is going to get inserted into those clips. Something like this, right? We'll do that in a second. But for now, we have to actually spin it upside down and worry about the low end here. Here's the clips that they give you that I'm talking about, these two gray ones here. We're ready to put our clip in here at the base of the blind. Now it gives you this little tang here at the bottom. So this part sorry, make sure my screws don't blow away. So this tang here at the base, this actually rests on the blind, which you'll see here. It goes like this, and it's now your guide. So it's basically your depth guide, right? So in this case here, we want our screw, so the screw hole that we see here, this is going to go on the side for the rail to clip into, right? So this rail, this part of the rail is actually going to clip right into our clip that we're putting in here. So you'll know if you did it wrong if that rail doesn't clip into this. But basically, even though this piece says right, because we're looking at everything upside down and backwards, it's actually meant for our left hand side here. So I'm just going to screw this in. Again, nothing has to be too tight, just has to go in. And this snaps right off, right? Same thing for the next side. Nice and screwed in, okay. So now that we have the clips in, this is where the real progress kind of gets made. In that, now we can mount the actual blind head to the whole system here. What we want to do is take our blind piece as we see it here. Take the sticker off if we want. So on the back side, we see these black kind of inserts, more or less. These are what are actually going to go right into our white clips up here. And we can keep all this on. Keep the strings on here. Keep, you know, our red tabs. That can all be kept on, so don't worry about that quite yet. This is a toolless system up here where we can actually just insert and install this toollessly. Just proceed with caution doing this part, you know, gently get it in place. And then once it's in, it is in, right? You would need basically something to pry it out from back within here, but this is going in. We don't have to worry about taking it out. It's pretty simple how it goes in. And I've never screwed it up, so hopefully no one else does. All right, so now that the top piece is in, we'll see our rails here. Each rail has, you know, kind of a pointy end, and it has a flat end. So the flat end is where it's going to get clipped into the bottom clips that we installed earlier. And the pointy end goes right up here. You can see how that kind of matches together. Now, in order to do that though, we have to sort of pull the blind back just a touch here and slide this grayish colored piece here into our section. All right, so what I did here to get that effect, so I don't think I can pull this out now, but I'll show you, is I pulled the string, I did what they did here on this side. The string goes up and around, down, and then back and behind this tang here. So make sure that the string is in that position, and it gives you freedom to kind of get it up to here. And then once it's in that position, we can really start to finalize this, you know, and push it upward into position slowly, carefully. Right, if you hear a grinding noise, don't worry about it, it's just the track. All right, now this part, let me see if I can do something here. All right, so this part, this is the clip, this is where the whole shebang goes down. So this rail has to clip into here. So you see how this still is connected at the top, right? It's just slidden in there in place. Now at the bottom here, once I focus, this has to get stuck in here. So you see that? See how it just clipped that little ridge line there? It's very, very important. So now And then, you know, as we move forward here, you got some screw holes for us to fill in. That's where the drill bit comes into place. So we're gonna do the same thing for the other side here. All right, so now that the rails are in, we can take our bag of screws. Now the screws for the clips that we put in first are different screws than the full bag of screws they give you. At least when this video was taken in June of 2020. So now we're going to take these screws and put them in the rails. I don't know if you guys can see what I'm talking about here, but each rail has 3 screws. Again, nothing too tight. Doesn't have to be cranked. This has to be put in. Three per side. The holes are pre-drilled for you. All right, here we go. So now that we got the blind in, got the rails, we got the bottom clips in that we did at the start. Now I'm going to show you what to do with these strings and kind of these red clips. All right, now so the red clips, you know, we can just take these puppies out. What I do is I pull at the bottom, twist them left or right, and you just pop right out. So now sometimes at the bottom, just to make sure you're doing it right, I try and pull it out that way. Like, don't just try and pull it out straight. I try and push it kind of sideways. That'll do the trick, and then I pull it out. Once, hold on, let me take this out first. And once this is loose, turn it sideways, voila. All right, so now that the strings are kind of loosely out and off to the side, this part here, make sure that the strings are not crisscrossed. It's very, very, very important. So what happens is, once we have this all ready to go, this part here, I believe I may have to refresh my memory a wee bit. I'm trying to do this one-handed. So now that we're here, okay, I believe something yes, like a disc. Okay. All right, so this part's always kind of confusing. I have to remind myself. So it actually gets inserted. You see this spring here? So this gets pulled back and forth for tension. This actually inserts like so. If I do recall. Or am I missing something? Yes, it does. Now, it just has to go down to the very, very end here. That's the only thing. Same thing for this side. Try and get that angle. Again, we're making sure our string is not crisscrossed. So we untwist it. We make sure it's sort of backwards parallel here. And we can bring it all the way to the very end so that this little gray tab here is essentially resting against the white vinyl frame on this side. And then we can push it in this way. All right, and that is pretty much it. All right, so now that we got everything put together, at least on the ground, and again, it's very wise to do this part on the ground. That way you can test it out, make sure everything works properly, so you're not on the roof with an open hole and stranded. That's no fun. So what I've done is I've taken the remote and batteries out of the box there. Batteries are included, which is good. And I'm just going to put the batteries in here in a moment. Just being careful. Again, toolless. Taking the back off of this here. Now this remote is already kind of attached to this blind here right from the factory. Now in this step here, as you can see, I'm doing 3 of these today. I got to be very careful which remote goes to which blind. Now, granted, all these skylights are in the same room, so it's not going to matter too much, but it is good to keep track. So make sure you're organized in which blind goes to which remote. All right, so once your batteries are all set, the trick is to hit the power button on the blind right here. Just bring it over to the one side. I believe the right side. You'll hear it start to vibrate. It might move, it might not. Sometimes it does. I don't think the new ones do. Then on the remote, because it's preset, I believe we just hit down. This is perfect. So the reason why we test it out here is we want to make sure that this puppy goes all the way down to the bottom and doesn't get any interference with anything. And the other reason too is we want to make sure this is all working before we put it on the roof, right? Again, you don't want to be working and doing all this on a very uncomfortable setting. Down here it's controlled, it's nice. And we hit the up button on the blind here. And everything seems to be working perfectly fine. Nice and level, going up and down. So I'm happy with this. Anyway, this is gonna end it for this video here to show you how to put the blind on the tray that come in 2 separate pieces. In the next video, we'll show you how to actually install this on the roof to an existing skylight.